listening to the Beauty of the Business podcast, where our goal is to inspire and educate while we deep dive into the exciting world where beauty meets business.
Get ready for insightful conversations, empowering stories, and behind-the-scenes look at the powerhouse women shaping the new business world of today.
Hey gang, thanks for joining us on this next episode of our podcast.
We're gonna steer a little differently and we're gonna make Lexi super uncomfortable and ask her all the hard-hitting questions of what it was like growing up in the modeling world, in the pageant world, and everything that came with that. So when we recorded our first episode, just getting into that, I was like, I have so many things to say, so many things to ask you. And I think the biggest one was, well, okay, I'm going to say that actually. Let me rewind. How old were you when you started that journey, and how old were you when you stopped that journey?
Okay. So I actually was basically doing it my entire life. When I was 3 years old, my mom, for some reason, I don't remember, it was in the newspaper or they got something in the mail of a pageant, and she decided that, of course, like every mom, I was the cutest thing in the world, and right, and should be in this pageant. So I was 3 years old in a pink, ruffled, very 90s dress. There is over 300 girls in the category I was in. And you had to have a chaperone, and at the end of the stage, they were going to interview you. How I had confidence at 3 to do that, I have no idea. She didn't prep me for any of it. It was just Mike, who is my older brother of 3 years, is going to be your chaperone because she thought it would be cuter than a dad. And of course it was. He was in a tuxedo.
So cute.
6 years old, just totally owning it.
I'm trying not to be convinced to sign my future children up.
I mean, it's definitely fun when you're a kid because you feel like a little Disney princess, right? Like all of your dreams of dressing up, putting on the makeup, and like being that princess that most little girls are just geared and like, I feel like just wired to want to be. Mm-hmm. It falls very much in line with that.
Totally.
So I get to the end of the runway, and everyone is, of course, obsessed with the fact that it's my older brother, but he's only 6, so little. And they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. Well, I live in New York and part-time in Florida. So naturally, or at least to me, it was natural. I said I wanted to be a movie star or an astronaut.
Of course.
Yeah.
Why not both?
Why not both? Which, looking back, I see why everyone was like, oh my gosh, what a good answer. But to me, I live where I see spaceships and I live where I see people making films. So like that was just my norm. Like I said,
Makes
like
sense.
Very different from other people. But I ended up getting third runner up out of the 300 and something.
Wow.
So I think my mom just saw it as like a really good opportunity. And then from there, pageants became kind of our norm. We were doing like maybe like 3 to 4 a year. And when I say we, my brother did them as well. We have to have him on. We do. It was very monkey see, monkey do. Like if he did it, I wanted to do it, and kind of vice versa. But yeah, so we started doing pageants, and then it was more his idea. He was, 3 years older, that he wanted to do like acting and modeling. So like I said, he did it, I did it. So we did a lot of that, and one of the fun things we got to do was he got a Tommy Hilfiger runway show, and naturally my mom didn't leave me home. She just brought me, and of course you can't show up to a designer's show wearing another designer. So I'm head to toe in Tommy Hilfiger. I'm pretty sure it was my brother's clothes. It was those carpenter jeans that were like you have the part for the hammer.
I love it.
That actually had like Tommy's logo on it. I'll never forget.
Setting the trend before it was a
trend. I feel like I thought I looked cool, or maybe I thought I looked like a boy, but I kind of loved it at the time.
Totally.
And even on our way in, I didn't have a hat. My mom stopped at Penn Station, had someone embroider TH.
Shut up. Oh my goodness. It's
red
amazing.
Hat, blue letters. She's like, I'm like, this is knockoff Tommy. She's like, you're wearing it. And so we go to the show, and I'm waiting in the audience, just to watch him. And my mom's kind of always been, the protective stage mom, and now as an adult, I completely see why. And 1,000% grateful for it. But this man tapped me on the shoulder and he's like, hey, you're going to be late. Like, they're about to start the show. And I'm like, oh, I'm not in it. And he's like, what do you mean you're not in it? I'm like, well, my brother's in it. I'm just here. And I'm nervously looking for my mom because there is some random man talking to me. Yeah. And so he's like, no, that's ridiculous. You have to be in the show. And I like tap my mom and I'm like, this crazy lunatic is trying to steal me. And she's like, oh, no, go with him. And I'm like, oh, such a weird reaction from her. Because if you've ever met her, that is not. She's like, no. So we go back there and he tells whoever is the lead back there to get me dressed, that I'm going to be in the show. And this man seems very annoyed with me. I'm not sure if you remember Harriet the Spy. I feel like we're the same age, so hopefully yes. So Michelle Trachtenberg was actually in the show and behind me on rollerblades. And I found out that the person who snagged me from the audience was actually Tommy Hilfiger.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's
so
insane.
Crazy at the time.
We need to find footage of this, by the way. Does your mom have it on tape? Did she record everything?
I feel like it's got to be somewhere because the song we walked down to was Mbop. So,
as it should be.
I mean, why wouldn't it, right?
Did you dance? Did you have to dance?
No. I do remember Michelle Trachtenberg holding onto the back of like my jacket or my vest up until the very like last minute because she was on rollerblades and didn't want to fall off the stage. And I do remember in my head wanting to like make sure I posed at the end of the stage so that I was like memorable and not just like walking since I got like scooped to do this.
Right.
So that was just a really crazy and cool experience. But something that followed was obviously getting callbacks to come and do, audition for the show again and for Tommy Hilfiger modeling in general. And every time I would go through the first process, I would make it to the callback. My brother would make it to the callback. Usually he got the job. But anytime I was put in front of this man named Jack Rich, who was the same man who Tommy told to put me in the show, he would recognize me and say no. And I was, under the age of 12 and super nervous. And it was really weird at that age to be exposed to a full-grown adult who is making decisions kind of more politically off of whether or not they liked really your mom or the fact that somebody put you in a show that you had no real decision in, right? Like I wasn't the one pushing for it. Somebody else of authority told you to do something and you're taking out on me, and how much that can really affect your career or like how you feel.
Totally. You're like, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? Like in that age, I can only imagine you're like, I'm trying to be the best I can.
I'm just going to sit here and smile and you're going to see me.
What am I doing wrong?
Yes, exactly. And I knew enough to know he didn't like the position he was put in because of me. But being an adult now, it's crazy to me that an adult would treat a child that way.
And that's the name of the game, especially then, right? I mean, I feel like now maybe it's a little bit different.
Now
it has to be.
Yes.
But then it seemed so cutthroat and so like your feelings did not matter.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can remember times where, this is way ahead because this is when I was younger, but when I would go in for being measured for like my modeling contract and I would be skinny as a rail, as skinny as I possibly could be. But like naturally I have a butt and hips, and they would tell me that my measurements were like too big. And I'm like, well, that's my bone.
Yeah. Do you have a surgeon that can perform surgery on me right now?
What do you want me to do? So now, my hips. Luckily it's nice to see that things have like kind of shifted. But, with pageants, there's like a lot of good things and things that I think, made me who I am today. It definitely makes you pretty tough. But you also have to have, or at least be able to fake the confidence to get up in front of a room and perform and look like you're owning it, right?
Right.
But then at the end of the day, you're also getting a score sheet as to whether or not you did well owning it. So there's highs and lows to it. I definitely think as a kid, it was so much fun, but I did it until I was 18. So, puberty and going through puberty while in competition on stage and in a bikini,
like if I wasn't already being judged enough, now I'm literally getting score sheets of judgment.
Precisely. And comments of what to do better.
Yeah.
Yes.
How to be better.
So that part is interesting. I I was a part for a very brief time. I was probably one of the youngest people to do Miss Teen New York for the USA, like Trump's old organization. I was 13.
Wow.
But for me, I'd been in pageants 10 years, so it seemed like the next step. You want to be Teen USA? Start early, do it a few times, and then, you'll have the next platform to get to. I got first runner-up when I was 13, and they told me I was just too young. Like, they're not going to send me against 16-year-olds when I'm 13. And in that, you have to interview and know how to speak to people and present. So with pageants, they do things like, I think we had talked about a little bit before. I was in a hair and makeup room they were talking about putting my hair in a ponytail, and I said make sure my ears are a little covered because they stick out. And no one in that room said, honey, you look beautiful. I don't know what you're talking about. They said, oh, when you're 16, we'll just have your parents get them pinned back for you.
Crazy. Validating your very insecurity.
Yeah.
Not making you think less of the insecurity.
No,
almost heightening it.
Yeah, because I see that and we need to fix that.
Wild.
Right? So that part is something I definitely don't agree with, but it does make you tough.
Yeah.
But the benefit is you do learn how to speak to people. You do build a bit of like this shell where little things aren't going to offend you, and you learn that not everybody's gonna like you. Not everybody's gonna think you're pretty. And what you bring to the table might be fine, but someone might just like someone else better. And you kind of do learn to just have a confidence, whether you have to fake it at first for a little bit.
Right.
But
totally.
The highs and lows definitely like built, I think, who I am now, because I think circling back to why I'm behind the chair, I started to do more of like the hair and makeup side of things as I turned like 17, because I wanted to transition and not be the person who was being judged, but was the person to try to make people feel pretty.
You're like, I've been on that side of it. I know how hard it can be. Why not
rough.
Take this?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So what age would you say you were when you started kind of being more on the back end of it?
I would say I wanted to probably start more like, I think more 16. Yeah.
Did you have someone kind of in your ear, or did you just kind of naturally feel that this was, I see this path and this is an opportunity?
I think with high school and your body changing, and when you're a little kid, you don't know the politics behind things, but as you become a teenager, you start to notice the adult things more, like, oh, this person didn't outperform me. This person's best friend is friends with so-and-so, and so they won. It wasn't a lack of me. It was the behind the scenes. Potentially, sometimes it is the lack of you. Sometimes you trip. Sometimes you didn't do the best. But when you like get off stage and you're like, oh, killed it. And then you're like, that person didn't know what. And then you're
seeing a whole
other side of it, and you start kind of being more aware of that. And I think that's when it started being less fun for me. Because before it was like, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to do this. I'm going to nail it. I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to work really hard. And at the end of the day, back then there was like prize money. So it was $5,000 in a weekend.
This is high stakes.
Yeah. So like, especially when you're a little kid, it doesn't matter because you're doing it for the trophy and to be on stage and you think it's all fun. But once you start recognizing everything that really goes into it and the things that are kind of out of your control, I think is when it became less fun and I started transitioning into wanting to be more of the behind the scenes, because I loved so many parts of it that I didn't want to leave it completely.
That's what I'm so curious about, because knowing myself personally, if something starts to make me very uncomfortable, I'm like, screw this, I'm not doing it. And it really takes me having some time away or someone coming in and being like, this is something you should really keep working on. So I'm so fascinated by the fact that you were so ingrained in kind of that beauty world and you saw it as an opportunity to change the beauty world. Like you didn't completely like rebel against it.
Right.
Or did you ever like have a time where you were like, I'm not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole?
A little bit. I mean, I think now, I think most people don't know, like I don't talk about being in pageants normally. I don't dress overly girly. I think I'm kind of very much the opposite. Like I like more of the edginess of beauty now versus that stereotypical, standard of beauty.
Did that take a while for you to realize or to like feel comfortable breaking through? Because I know me personally, like just knowing how I liked living my life, I didn't feel like it matched up with the beauty world. I felt like, oh, I have to be this version of me to be in the beauty world. But is that something that kind of just came naturally of like, I can do my own thing?
I mean, yes and no. Like I think I definitely like wanted to put my middle finger up to the beauty world and the standards and those things. I mean, I cut my hair off. I had purple hair, blue hair. I still do wear combat boots. And, now that seems way more normal than it did 15 years ago.
Right.
But at the time it was definitely jarring and people were very kind of shocked. And, there was a time where I stepped away from a lot of the things in my life. But when you're young, it's also hard to fully like communicate all the time. Totally. So you just end up kind of in this weird rebellious stage. So there was a period of time where I had like the Triumph Doc Martens that go all the way up to your knee, and like I only wear black, and I still to this day don't wear a ton of makeup. So like there are things that I love about the industry, but there are things that I think are crazy, and a lot of people don't realize that the glitzy pageant world, like toddlers and tiaras, is good on many fronts. I will keep saying that. There are a lot of things that
totally
I think are great, but there are these weird, this will be shocking for people, they call them voy boards. I don't know if they still exist today. I'm gonna assume they do.
I've never heard of this. I'm so interested.
So it's like you will announce like your win, right? So you would have basically like this Facebook-ish ad or like Instagram post. It was before Instagram really was a thing, right? Of like you and what you just won this weekend, and kind of post it to the pageant world. But it was basically run by pageant parents because all the kids are way too young to do any of this. So the gossip, and they would use like acronyms for people's names, so you kind of had to guess. So they weren't technically talking about you, right? Like, so like I would have been like AM, and there are other AMs, but you had to take the context to figure it out. There were rumors people died. And like people would post, rest in peace.
Wow.
And these kids weren't dead.
That's insane.
There was, yeah, it's like very strange. And of course, I was never technically allowed to look at them. Did I sneak on and look at them?
Absolutely.
Of course, because you're interested.
Yes.
But like you also don't realize like the damage you're doing. There was one time, and I think my mom listens to this, she has no idea that I saw this. And this was when I was in high school, so I was old enough to, sneak on and check out and see if anyone was saying anything. And people were talking about the way I looked in a bikini, and how can her waist be so skinny but her legs and her butt are so big.
Wow.
And like you reading that as a kid, you're like, is that really? Like, do I really think that? And like, I mean, now, heck yeah, it is. Like, my waist is tiny, and like I got a big butt. Like, thank you.
Thanks. It's actually a wonderful thing.
Like, thank you. But when you're, when someone's saying it in a negative way, and then adults are making comments, it's adults, so you feel like it's coming from a place of authority. And so like that is really...
They know what they're talking about. You just automatically assume.
Yeah, you don't... I mean, now being an adult, I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly how these people were thinking.
Right.
But as a teen, you don't see it that way. You're like, if they're saying it, it's true, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is really how people view me.
It must be true.
Must be. They hold so much weight. And now I'm like, whatever,
Thank
talk
God
about me all you
for
want.
that growth.
Yeah. Well,
where would we be if we still had our mindsets and our insecurities of our teen years? That would be a scary thing. I
completely agree. So it definitely shaped, who I am today and how I approach things, because I never want anyone to feel the way I felt, especially in those moments. And I want people to get more than just like a first impression and not necessarily be judged on their physical. Is my job now to make your first impression the best ever.
Totally.
Yes, but I think that's part of why I'm so passionate about what I do and why I feel so tied to it and feel like it is such a powerful thing, because I know how harshly you can be judged.
And, there's so much that you obviously learned from that entire experience, taking away the things that it can do to your self-confidence. It can, in the same token, boost your self-confidence. I mean, I did a pageant once when I think I was a senior in high school. I got a letter in the mail and I was like, you know what? I've always thought this would be a fun thing to do. Let's go. Let's do it. Cool experience. I got to go shop for a dress. Like, why not?
Yes.
Stay in the hotel for the night. And
it really is like this almost like princess-like experience. So it is great. Yeah.
But, I wasn't doing it as a child. I don't know that my self-confidence would have sustained and turned it into such a beautiful thing like you did.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm very impressed by that. But thinking about my experience in a pageant, getting up and speaking in front of people, you do that essentially now for a living.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that was something you were already comfortable in, or did you have a lot of help getting you comfortable with that?
So honestly, interview was always where I like floundered because I'm just an socially awkward human being from the get-go. But when I started doing the Miss USA system, they definitely recommend you have an interview coach, which was news to me. So I, of course, worked with what they would refer to as like the best interview coach, and we would have sessions, and there was a whole book to go through, and he taught you kind of how to come off more open and appealing, especially when answering questions, or how to almost restate a question before you answer it so you have a minute to think about what you're going to say. So I do think it helped, especially because like you said, like you were a shy kid, I was shy, and as you grow up, people take shyness as almost you being conceited or mean, because I feel uncomfortable. So look on my face is uncomfortable, but you're taking it as I don't like you.
Right.
Just because I'm not like smiling in the corner.
Yes.
So I think that did help me, especially behind the chair, communicate like my points without coming off in a negative way.
When you were doing all of this, you went to a public school or a private school?
Private school.
Did people in your school know that this is something that you were doing, and how did that interact in your schooling world?
So I went to school on Long Island, which is already like a very interesting community.
It deserves
of its own.
a reality show of its own.
It really does. I loved my school. It was a really small school. I liked a lot of people I went to school with. Yeah, it was, our entire school had 500 kids. So
everything that you did, everyone knew.
Everyone knew. If they were pulling me out to be on the set of Law and Order, obviously the staff would know, but then that would get around and everyone knew. So yeah, I don't think I talked about the pageants as much because I didn't really have to take off of school for those. But everyone was very aware that that's what I did.
And you would think that it does make you, like, one would think, oh, this makes someone kind of more popular, but in reality,
it's definitely a little bit more of a target because it's high school. I mean, if someone finds something to pick on you about, or that they think they can make you feel some certain way about, I feel like it's only natural to kind of go on the attack. I don't think people mostly really attacked me about high school. I think or just pageants, maybe. I don't know. High school was kind of a whirlwind and something I just
blocked out.
Partially blocked out.
Same. I'm like, I have no memory hardly from high school.
My like biggest high school memory is that I was notorious for falling down the stairs freshman year.
Oh no.
So that's like
a hard one to get rid of.
Yes. Hitting the face of the door. Like I was just not equipped for the ups and downs and the ins and outs before that. So yeah, that's probably like my biggest thought when I think of high school.
Okay, so we were in the salon a couple weeks ago, and I'm doing a shampoo, and you just so nonchalantly pass by me and say, have you ever seen that show, Toddlers and Tiaras? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Who hasn't? Why are you asking? And what did you say?
My mom started the show. Yeah.
That's wild.
Crazy. I think you guys must have been talking about something related, because normally I don't just throw that in. It's something I don't.
And the subject completely, like, very quickly shifted. I'm like, did she regret saying
I'm like, I was like, oh,
we're
no
saving
more
that for the
We're
podcast.
not diving into this today. I don't got time. Yeah. So, you know, my mom had been in the pageant world. I had been in the pageant world. my entire life. So when I started wanting to be more on the back end of things, I started coaching away a little bit from my coach, who was a phenomenal pageant coach. Loved her. She was definitely like a stern woman, but like Southern stern, where you just really wanted her to love you. Yes. I mean, they taught you everything down to like, you're smiling too big.
Right.
Work on your smile. This is where your lip hits when you smile, and like do it again. So I smile that way till this day.
Wow.
Yeah. So very little things that, you know, like I said, like as a kid, you don't think about. You're just like, I'm smiling, and yes, both rows of my teeth are showing. You're like, we're gonna tone that down a notch. We're gonna tone that down. Now it's beautiful, right? So my mom and I got on like the coaching side of it, and then even after, you know, I turned 18 and stopped doing them, she continued because she had built a following. And at some point, TLC approached her, and she gave them some names of people she thought would be great, put them in contact, and I personally have only watched like maybe 1 or 2 episodes, but if you watch, she's on there multiple times, and some of the people that I competed with are the coaches now, which...
The show is still on currently?
You know, I'm not sure.
Interesting. We need to look into this.
I know, we do. They did approach me about doing a little bit, and I didn't really want to be a part of it. Just because the few episodes I watched, you know, maybe people had different experiences, and I'm sure everyone has a different version of their experience. But seeing some of the coaches do things like spraying collagen on a 7-year-old's face and stuff, one... that's pointless. And
they have all of the collagen.
Like, what are we doing? And 2, it's like those little things that you're so unaware of as a child that I think you should be so unaware of as a child.
Right.
So, you know, I'm not going to talk negatively about anybody, but it's like those little things that hit home for me that I was like, I don't want to dive into it because I think it would not be my favorite thing or authentic to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't see how someone who grew up in the industry is now turning around and kind of doing the same thing, without like tweaking it.
Totally. And we all know like TV is going to take what it wants to and use what it wants to, and that's your reputation at the end of the day and everything you stand for.
Right. And I think I'm just like so the opposite now that I'd be like, I'm not doing that. Like, right. You might think that's cool, I'm not doing that, and it's I would probably be just a pain in the butt or too polarizing. I don't know. But I just think like, you know, let kids be kids. Yeah, I'm down for them to dress up, I'm down for them to do these things, but you know, don't tweak a child's diet. And if you're going to, don't say you are. Yeah. You know, like...
Yeah, as long as they're
like,
healthy.
If they're unaware of what you're... You know, if you're like, okay, like it's...
Don't put it in their heads.
Yeah, because you're all of a sudden making them think of something that they were never aware of. And, like, I've watched coaches say to a mom, like, in front of an 8 or 9-year-old, like, you know, no more carbs until next week because we got to get rid of that little belly. And seeing that kid's face and like, you can't undo what they just heard.
You cannot.
You know, and I'm like, you just took that like innocence and fun of this whole thing for them and made it something completely different. So
absolutely.
I try to tiptoe around what I say in front of children especially, but you know, that's why I just never really dived into that. But yeah, my mom is on it, and my mom is, I mean, I love my mom. But she's one of the coaches, and so you'll see her in and out on there, but she's That's great. Awesome. Yeah.
I love this like polarizing experience of this thing being so hardcore into how you look, how much you weigh, your measurements and everything, and your ability to say, okay, you know, beauty is important because it makes us feel good. It makes us feel like the person that we want to be out in the world, but to know it's not going to determine your importance. It's not what makes you a great person or makes you worth love. Like, all these children, all of these girls are worth so much love, and the like you said, you can never forget these things as a kid. And I'm just so amazed by the fact that you stayed in the beauty industry and you really took control of the situation and said,
thank you.
This is something that is important and I'm not going to turn my back on it. I'm just going to make it better. And I feel like you're doing an amazing job at that.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, I feel like that's how you grow, and I think that's how you and we as like humans are supposed to respond to things. Like everything that's happened to you in your life to this point is for a reason. Good, bad, ugly,
Totally.
terrible, traumatic. And like it's whether we like it or not, it shapes us and like gives us certain tools. And I think it's our job once we are actual adults to use those tools to either like use it for the positive or tweak the way things were so that somebody who's dealing with that either has an outlet or like has a different type of experience or a better experience when they do go into that part of life.
And what better, person to help send that into the universe as someone who's literally been through it.
Yeah, we don't talk about this much, so enjoy your deep dive, guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I don't know. I mean, ask me all the questions. I'm here to answer them always. But yeah, it definitely was, I think, something most people don't. Oh, I love that face you're making.
Yeah, this is me having a question. Okay, I have a question.
Go for it.
If you had a daughter and she wanted to go into this world,
yes,
would it be something you would allow, encourage, discourage? Do you have an opinion on that?
I thought about that a lot.
Because you have nieces.
Yes, so I do have a niece who is not in pageants, and I mean, she would probably be killer at it because she's
a natural speaker.
She is. She's unapologetically
so
her, and so like, okay, cool. And she's 2. It's insane to me. I've thought about it a lot, and I think I would be fine until they were teens because like when I was a kid, yeah, it taught me discipline. You have to know a routine, just like with dance and anything. And I had no dance routines. I was also in dance competitions. So like it made me better for school. I knew how to study and discipline and like learn something from point A to point Z and like have it down pat, like it was the back of my hand, which doesn't come with a lot of other things. Like sports is ever changing where this is like a structure and you're doing it, verbatim. But I think when you're little, it's like dress up. You feel like a princess. You get to put on makeup. You get your hair done. You get on stage. You get your photo taken. Like you feel like you're living this Disney fairy tale, right? You get a crown at the end of it. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Who doesn't want a crown just put on their shelf?
Well,
as a 5-year-old. How many crowns did you have?
There's a whole section in my childhood home still. Maybe we'll add that in at the end of this episode for you guys to see. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I think up until about maybe like 5th or 6th grade, I would be cool with it. But once your body starts changing, I think it's too much for you to really wrap your head around. And I think that would be something that I would be open to discussing with them later, but not just assuming that it's a good fit for them.
Yeah. And, we live in such a different time now, too, which is great. I think it's so interesting, the generation that we're a part of. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the science is behind it, but we were all just so much more, like, emotionally deep. Our emotional depth was so much more, I feel, than maybe generations before us, where the things that maybe didn't mean so much to other people just seem to really mean the world to us, and we can carry that into our next, future generations of being uber sensitive to those things that if, my kid wants to go into pageants, at least how to
navigate it a little bit.
Navigate it and keep their head above water.
That being all the things I said, people are gonna probably hate me for this, but whatever, it's my podcast.
Yeah, say what you want, girl.
I still think bikini competition should be a part of the competition because you're getting up on stage in your underwear, basically, which you can say like, oh, you shouldn't have to. Well, then don't enter the pageant, right? Like it says something and does something for your confidence for you to be able to get up on a stage with stage lights on your entire body in high heels. Yeah. And own the stage. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But like, then I don't think the pageant world at all is for you, which is also fine. I mean, like I said, I'm back and forth with all of it, but I think if you're going to do it, that is the point, right? Yeah, you're being judged on your body. Yes, there are good and bad things that come with that, but it's not for me so much of like, oh, well, they're going to say that girl's body's better than the other. A lot of it is how you carry yourself. So like you could be not the most ripped person up there, but you come out on the stage and nobody can take their eyes off of you.
Yes. Your inner light just showing
through.
Yes.
And like, it's so hard to get up in a bikini at the beach. Imagine putting on high heels and walking on a stage. Like, you have to exude a certain level of confidence. And I think it's really important to kind of keep that in the pageant world, because that's what it's about, is like you exuding this confidence that isn't seen as brightly in everyone else.
Yeah. I actually was just listening to a podcast specifically about confidence.
Yeah.
And they said confidence isn't just something that you have. It's a destination.
Yes.
These things you have to work through. You have to challenge yourself. You even have to fake it till you make it.
And a lot of faking it till you make it, yes.
So much fake it till you make it.
You're like shaking. Yeah, absolutely.
And the confidence comes after. And, you know, just as you said, of all the things that come with it, at least it puts that power in you to say, I did this.
Right.
I owned it. I may have been shaking in my boots 4 minutes before, but then I got out there and I did what needed to be done to get the job done. And learning that at such a young age is a skill that you take with you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And I think it also, you know, once you're grown, makes little things people say either about you or to you, or that you hear people are saying, hurt less, because you're like I've seen way worse.
Right.
You know, like come at me a little harder.
I've literally gotten papers.
Good try. Thank you. You know, yeah, exactly. So
where I read.
I think there's a lot of good that comes from it. You know, I know this topic is super polarizing one way or the other. Yeah, it did it, you know, basically break me down and build me back up. Absolutely. Do I still have a love-hate with the industry? Of course. But I think that's anyone looking back on their childhood and things that they went through.
This is something that I'm sure we'll talk about more in the podcast, but the way that you've built your salon is such a team-built salon, and you're always about encouraging, and your biggest thing is like not having competition within each other. Like that's not a game that we play.
No.
We're all on the same team. And even outside of our salon, like in the beauty world, this isn't a competition. We're all here to lift each other up. Teamwork makes the dream work. And surely that's something that you learned from, you know, everything that you experienced as a child going forward, like how much that can really make or break just a community, an environment, a person.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, you know, the people around you are so essential into whether or not you really succeed, especially like in the beauty industry when I started. And, you know, this new generation of hairstylists, we talk about all the time, have it so easy.
So easy.
I mean, with social media, we didn't have social media to show people we were kick-ass. We just had to just sit there and grind and like hope someone let us do their hair to show them.
And told that someone.
We were. Yes, exactly. And, you know, we had to be the assistants and be there before the stylist got there, and all we were doing was shampooing and getting yelled at and sweeping up hair and, you know, just hoping to get our hands on some hair. And now they step out of school and they're, you know, renting a booth. And I'm like, I wish.
Right.
Part of me is jealous. Part of me is like, you need a bigger support system than just you. And you don't realize how valuable that is at the end of the day, because when I started in this industry, I mean, I think we've talked about it a little bit, you know, it wasn't everyone sharing their formulas or helping or being like, ooh, you know what, in that picture I see baby lights, I would do it this way. Everyone is very much about like hiding their formulas and like, I'm not going to tell you because I want your client to sit in my chair.
Totally.
And it wasn't until actually Alexis one time at a party came up to me, and, you know, her and I at the time, 10 years ago, oh my gosh, so long ago, you know, we're very parallel in the work we kind of put out and in the clientele we were wanting and to take on. And this being a pretty small community, you know, we were kind of silent rivals in a way. But I saw her at a party and she walked up to me and said, your updos and your bridal work are honestly so inspiring. I could never do that. And I remember just blankly staring at her like, why are you complimenting me?
Yeah, that's not something that happens. Let me just say, like in the hair world, that is, especially where we came from in the hair world, that is not something that happens. There was almost this just natural ingrained of everyone's your competition.
Yes.
You have to be better than them. You have to not share anything with them. And to hear for someone who you think is, should be your competition to just come up and say that.
And that was where like my whole mentality shifted of like, oh my gosh, there are people out there like this. And like hearing that just made such an impact on me. I don't even think she realized it at the time. That was what I wanted to cultivate and create when I opened up my own space. I didn't want someone looking at your work and talking behind your back about it or whispering to another stylist, because that's all I've ever experienced.
Right.
I wanted someone to come up and be like, oh my gosh, what did you use? Or like, how'd you, that's beautiful. And we all can learn from one another. And I think, growing up in the things that I did and realizing like it literally takes a village to make someone look like that on stage.
Right.
You all have to feed off each other in order to be like your best version, and maybe even push you when you're down to like get past that burnout or shift your focus when you feel like you just met your max.
Yeah. It's so great. Alexis is such a great asset to your team. I walked in my first day at Canvas. I walked in and said hi. And the first thing Alexis said to me is, I can't wait to learn from you. And I'm like, I can't wait to learn from you. And she just set the tone right then and there of like, this is how we do things.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew I was in the right place, because
thank you. We love having you.
Yes, I am so happy to be there. And I came from a few different salons, and I was very fortunate to have one person in particular that we worked kind of together everywhere we went. And she had been actually in a completely different field, in the medical field, and halfway through her life decided she was going to go to cosmetology school. And she was the first person who ever presented that notion to me of, this is not competition. We are not competing against each other. We're besties and we are sharing formulas. And I was like, oh, I'm like maybe 2 years into being a stylist. Actually, no, I was probably just a year into being a stylist and had just come from a very competitive place. And she saw it on my face. I ran into her one day at a beauty supply store, and she just saw on my face that I wasn't happy. I wasn't lit up like I should be 1 year.
You're doing what you're passionate
career.
about. You should be coming in excited. Yeah.
And she's like, you should come work where I'm working. And it completely changed the whole dynamic of, we're not out here to compete. We're not out. We're all just here working together. And it's a very weird thing.
Enough in my life.
Life
to where I don't want it to be a competition.
Yes,
okay.
No,
absolutely.
In salon environment is a very safe space, which is so wonderful. So obviously that is a whole other podcast episode that we can dive
Huge
into.
Topic itself. Yeah. Maybe I will bring Alexis on, and maybe we'll have Matisse come in here and we can kind of dive into what the beauty world used to be and where it's going and how we see that as good, bad things, the challenges we have with people coming on as a team member who, maybe wasn't put through as much as we were, which could be a good or bad thing. But I think that's
New school versus old school.
Yeah, I think that's another great topic to have in a conversation with them, since they've been in it for so long.
Absolutely. I'm so excited.
Thanks. I'm excited too. Thanks for joining us on our deep dive of my lovely pageant life and how I got to here. Yeah, send questions, comments. Feel free. I'll take it all, good, bad, ugly, But definitely subscribe, comment, share, and join us for our next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, gang.
Bye.